Hello and
Right.
welcome to Media
Go on.
Musings.
Right. Just so people know, Ring did not tell me he was going to do that. I had this in my fucking head at the time, and I almost spilled it.
Honestly, I wasn't planning on doing it. I was like, oh yeah, I have the mask I used for my Halloween special last year or a couple years back, just in arm's reach. Might as well.
See, I'm one of these lucky sort of fellas. I don't need the Halloween costume. I can just turn my fucking camera on. You know.
Yeah. But it is Halloween, and we are covering a rather suitable movie.
I would say so.
By talking about Alien, and of course, welcome to anyone who is lurking in the comment section and or watching in the future. So it's a pretty I recently saw a post that said Alien is like the original Alien is more of a slasher flick, and I can definitely see that interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, I think interestingly, it was pitched as, and I get the feeling this is why the studio may have greenlit this project to begin with. It was sort of pitched to the studios as being like Jaws in space.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that. I don't even know that may have even been a title of the script at one time. I don't know. But bear in mind, probably the two biggest film franchises in the world in the mid to late 1970s are Jaws and Star Wars. You can probably see why this got greenlit. And obviously, I think in a certain way, that's not a bad analogy either, of a bit like Jaws in space. It's a monster movie as well. And it is a real, I do think this is a real great example of using suspense in a film.
Yeah.
This film is an absolute masterclass in that, to me.
Though, I will say, the Jaws in space analogy only really works because in both Jaws and Alien, the real monster was the capitalism we found along the way.
Yes. 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 So the very greedy. Now, I don't believe in this movie we actually hear the name of the corporation, but I think we come to know it's called the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, or I think it's called. Which is just a big mega corporation. Which we'll get into this as a plot point a bit later about. But I think obviously the first thing that always comes up, I think, when Alien is discussed is the character of Ellen Ripley, who was originally written as a man, to be as a man character. And I believe it was Ridley Scott's call to change the character and have Ripley being a woman, and casting Sigourney Weaver, which I think was one of the absolute best decisions. That was the best decision made for this film. Because this really made Sigourney Weaver, this film, as well.
Basically adds credence to the adage to you don't need to you don't need to write a strong female character. You need to write a character who happens to be female.
Yeah. And this is what I do like about the way Ripley is written. I mean, that it's not like it's not going too far down any particular trope of like the tough girl trope, or the and they're not doing the sort of sexy heroine kind of thing really with this. I mean, Ripley, yes, she is a tough character, but she is also vulnerable. and shows that a number of times. And does makes mistakes, even though she's probably the most sensible one on there. Yeah, she makes some decisions that you could maybe argue are not necessarily the best. Me personally, I don't know that I'd have gone to that fucking effort to save the cat myself. We get to that. That's just me.
Maybe,
suppose that offends any cat lovers out there, but sorry, fuck the kitty.
Maybe if it were a dog.
Yeah.
Though, I mean, if anything, the cat's the most innocent member of the crew. The cat didn't act.
I think I just offended Noodle in the chat.
Yeah. The cat didn't ask for this.
Yeah. I mean, see, I think my view of cats. I think the cat's a more scary monster than an alien, to be honest. But that's just me.
I mean, only when it was like in the chest burster stage.
Yeah.
Cats are only really scary if they're bigger than you.
Well, there is actually a very famous. There was a famous parody of Alien that was done on British TV, like it must have been in the 1980s or something. And there was a famous children's cartoon, not a cartoon, a puppet character called Sooty, and they had Sooty being the chest burster. It was quite funny.
Though I will say another thing, like with another thing that Ratchet, that adds to like the kind of suspense atmosphere. Well, I mean, first, we have essentially the pan through of the empty ship where you get, where you get to kind of feel the claustrophobia, of the, entire setting of the movie, essentially.
Yeah.
With the exception of the alien planet.
Yeah. I mean, it almost sets that vibe and that atmosphere up from the very beginning of the film. Just with the sort of setting of, just the sort of setting, the vibe, the atmosphere of the movie. And I mean the ship, that spaceship in a lot of places is very poorly lit and very, you get a very cold, dark kind of feel to the movie.
But another thing which makes it a better horror movie, a better horror, slasher movie than most, and I can't really make this comparison because I'm not really into watching horror, but most horror flicks have the there's that trope where the protagonists always do stupid shit and get themselves killed. In Alien, I mean, with the exception of, the intentional sabotage because, everyone is expendable. Everyone does the right thing, but pretty much everyone ends up dead. Spoilers for a 40-year-old movie.
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, I mean, there was definitely the argument, obviously, because there was the argument when they were going to bring Kane back on board, and Ripley was like, "No, we don't know what this thing is. There's rules about quarantining here.
Yeah,
that you need." Like, he was trying to tell the captain, "Look, if you were in my position, the roles were reversed. You would do the same thing here." And then, of course, Ian Holmes or Bilbo Baggins let him on board. So
yeah, but he was, spoilers, secretly an android. and also spoilers, secretly ordered to give, to bring the, specimen back to Earth at the expense of the crew.
Yes, this was they obviously, this is the one thing even before the sort of plot points revealed that Ash is this android, you do get the feeling right the way through this that he knows way, he clearly knows way more about this than he's letting on, what this thing is, than he's letting on, and is not being very helpful. So there's something, you kind of know something's going on with him all the way through it. He knows more about this than he's letting on, and of course, what the idea was that they knew what this alien was, and thought this is something that could be potentially weaponized.
Yeah,
and so
also like the guy who first gets infected. He keeps his spacesuit on. He keeps the helmet on. But it doesn't matter because the facehugger just melts through the glass.
Yeah.
Obvious.
it's sorry, I can't see the comments.
Yeah. It's a famous 40-year-old movie. I feel that the statutes of limitations for spoilers has expired for Alien.
But Gary, I'm just gonna let you know something just quickly. Turns out Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's father.
Well, or here's another one. Spoilers. Turns out the monster in Alien is an alien.
Wow.
Well, I mean that in capitalism.
It's like yeah. And spoiler alert: Titanic, the boat sinks.
Yeah.
So, right, we kind of lost our train of thought there, haven't we? So I don't know if you want to play this, whether we want to go through the plot or talk about any of the characters or whatever. There's not a massive amount of obviously characters in this, really.
Well, yeah.
There's the 6 of them, really.
Which, once again, amplifies the isolation of the of the of the feature, and of them. It's just a crew of a spaceship in space, and something goes wrong, really wrong.
Yeah. Well, they were originally you see right at the beginning of the film, they're sort of brought out of this like sort of suspended animation sort of chambers that they're in.
Yeah.
So it's I think so it's just kind of established that I think we're guessing that in the Alien universe, like hyperspace travel probably really isn't a thing, because they go to sleep for months or sometimes maybe years on end, whatever it is.
And that's probably one of the more realistic envisionings of future space travel is the hibernation model.
That's the sort of thing I will give the at least certainly this movie. And again, like I said, when we get further down in the sequels, like I've said this, the first 2 movies in this franchise I think are awesome. Then it starts just going downhill a bit, but I do always like there was an aesthetic where, I don't know, how can you say it for future society, it's one you could believe is possibly real.
Yeah.
You could suspend your disbelief, and maybe would be a better way of saying that. But it all felt very like, yeah, I could buy this actually happening.
Yeah. And honestly, like, because of the vast distances of space, it, like, in my opinion, like, aside from like our local solar system, terraforming probably won't be a like in any sci-fi universe that's realistically based off our off our future. I don't think terraforming's probably gonna be a thing, because arguably it'd be more cost effective to send out a generational arc ship and then breed the colonists, and slowly genetically engineer the
Yeah.
colonists to match the environment of the planet they'll be settling, rather than the other way around.
Yeah. But yeah, I've never really given terraforming a lot of thoughts, to be honest. So,
Yeah.
But I suppose it's one of those things that, okay, I can let that one go, though. I can let that one go for the rest of this movie. But so they're obviously they're woken up. They're brought out of their suspended animation chambers early, because they've got a distress signal, which turns out they're obliged to. They're obliged to, because if I remember, was it Parker was the name of Yaphet Kotto's character?
Yeah.
Who's again, that was him and the other guy were bitching about like their money or whatever for the whole trip they were doing, and
because like the two maintenance grunts were like only getting like half of what the other crew members were getting.
Yeah.
And we basically learn, like, that essentially in this universe, space law is basically naval law, where you have to respond to a distress signal.
Yeah. Which is, it's a good, which obviously is, again, helps a little bit with the whole sort of realism aspect of this. That, that would make sense, because this is what we do, on sea, and then, obviously then I got to admit that so they send obviously the landing party down, don't they? Which is the captain, Dallas, was it, in Kane, which is John Hurt's character, and was it Lambert? Is that the name of the other woman on board? I think that was her name. Yeah. And again, I think even there, like the sort of suspense aspect is quite, is quite. It's just, you get to this point, it's still sort of building and building to something, isn't it? And
then we get our first something that this isn't just a space movie.
Mm.
Well, I mean, obviously we get that with with the title crawl, where instead of just having the title on the screen like most title cards are, we get the line by line, and it just
gradually cut. That I love that little touch actually in the start of the movie. It is quite iconic actually, because people often talk about that. It is quite a good little touch that they did with that.
Yeah, where you, and it is like the title card is very much a a fitting metaphor for the movie as a whole, because through the movie you just get little bits of information, and then finally at the end you kind of see something of the whole picture.
Yeah. It is kind of in a way it's a bit of a slow burn in a sense, this movie, and then up to a very big sort of finish. That because initially, obviously, you just looking at this as looking in the context. If you have no context, you have the alien thing that's called the face hugger, which attaches itself to John Hurt's face. And you're like, is this the alien? Is this the alien? What is what is it? And
Actually, first, you have the giant ass pilot in the spaceship, and you're like, okay, so is this the alien?
And you see something's happened to him, and because he sort of looks like he's been exploded from the inside or something, which obviously will come into.
Which is a bit of clever foreshadowing. And I think it's right when like the away team is finding the chest bursted pilot is when the people on the ship are like, hey, this doesn't look like a distress beacon. This looks like a warning.
Yeah, this is basically stay the fuck away from here, or sort of. And obviously, as I said, John Hurt's Kane obviously discovers all the eggs, and then gets the face hugger. Obviously, the face hugger attaches himself, and of course they end up bringing it on board, which is what I said. Obviously, this is where I think you get the little scene I alluded to earlier between like Ripley and the character, and then you're starting to see a bit more of the character Ash and what's his game here.
Yeah,
where Ripley is because I think it's established that the pecking order on the crew is Dallas is the captain, Kane's second in command, and Ripley's third in the chain of command on board. But technically, if the two senior officers were away from the ship, technically she was the ranking officer on the ship.
But then, of course, Ash, the science officer, overruled it and let him in. And he gave the captain ordered it, so I had to.
Yeah. And then, because, yes, Ash and Ripley have a kind of confrontation. When he's studying the into something, this thing's a tough little son of a bitch and whatever, because they established this thing bleeds a form of acid that just seems to eat its way through several decks of the ship. And so it's got like a perfect defense mechanism. Because it's difficult to, you wouldn't really want to kill this thing, would you, at close range? Because
it explained and we kind of got a little bit of the foreshadowing for the acidic blood because John Hurt's helmet had been melted through.
And but yes, I was going to say, because Ripley and Ash obviously have this conversation when he's saying this, but I believe he refers to this creature as a tough little son of a bitch, and Ripley says, "Yeah, and you brought it on board."
Yeah. And the facehugger ends up, just dying because it's succeeded in its part of the life cycle. And they all have one last meal before going back into hibernation when John Hurt gets a really bad case of heartburn.
Very much so. I mean, I did like the whole thing when he started coughing and whatever. And
Yeah.
initially, like Yaphet Koto's character in the set next to says, "Come on, it's not that food's not that bad."
Yeah.
And then you know, so it's a bit of a joke, and like for a second or so, then there is okay, something really serious is happening here.
Yeah.
And he starts, was he going into this manic seizure, and then so that they get him on the table, and then obviously goes his stomach.
So, fun fact about that scene is all of the actors' reactions were genuine.
Yeah.
Because they were kept completely in the dark as to how violent it would be. Like, all it said in the script was the thing emerges.
Yeah. It's again, it's okay. It's sometimes it's a potential risk because you don't know how the reaction is going to go, but sometimes it can really pay off when you just get a genuine reaction, which is obviously what Ridley Scott was trying to do there. And it paid off big time that he did that was done for this movie.
Yeah, I mean, like, the whole keeping your actors in the dark to get a genuine reaction just kind of seemed to be a thing in the 70s and, you know, late 70s, early 80s.
Well, this does with horror films especially as well. I mean, it did seem to be, so we say, certain directors who were very committed to their art or whatever, to maybe possibly to a point where poor Shelley Duvall in The Shining, Kubrick put her through.
Yeah,
you know,
well,
but
well, I mean, arguably, it's not a horror movie. What came to mind, but honestly, it's probably traumatizing enough to count as one, especially since it falls under a lot of a weird amount of horror tropes. But the other example I was going to bring up was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah,
because a lot of those shots were the actors getting their first reactions to, like, the set for, like, the big elaborate candy room. Or you know, when Wonka comes out of the factory, that's like when all the other actors first saw Gene Wilder for the first time.
Yeah. It's I had heard that about that, but yeah, it did seem to be a very much a, and again, I suppose there's merit to that sort of filming when you're trying to get genuine reactions, but also I'd imagine some risks as well. Especially with that scene, there's something where, you know, it could have, because it's one take to get this right, and it could have just been like a whole. It could have gone very wrong especially when you're trying to give people a boot fright moment like that.
Yeah, and you know, especially if, like, someone had like issues about blood, and you have, like, an actor just passing out.
Yeah, but definitely as for a scene, this paid off, and so this you know, this alien, it's quite small thing, just burst out of the chest, just vanishes, shoots off like really fast. They got to find a way of finding this thing and tracking it, which I think they work.
And they rig up a motion tracker, which, you know, like, unfortunately only goes off, you know, at a
within a certain distance of whatever from you.
And which would have been, you know, perfectly fine, except they also had a cat on board.
Yeah. which leads to the first problem. They split the. I mean, they split into two teams, don't they? I think it's it's Dallas, Ash, and I'm trying to think Lambert, and then I forget the other guy. The first sort of the guy who just says right all the time.
And then Ripley and the two maintenance guys.
Yeah. They come across something, of course. They pick something up on the motion detector, track it down, and of course it turns out they pull the thing back, whatever, and you get your scary moment of the film. It turns out to be the bloody cat.
Yeah.
And then the cat darts off. So this is, arguably, I mean, you could argue maybe this is possibly where they made a mistake, but at the same time, they didn't quite know what they were up against still.
Yeah,
with this.
Also, it was like, arguably it was a mistake, but also arguably it was the right move in the situation at the time, because someone had to go get the cat, because you couldn't have the cat setting off false alarms again.
But the thing is, obviously they split even further, just send him off by himself to catch the cat, which like you said, they needed to get hold of the cat, because that was also becoming, and at this point, obviously, with the obvious exception of Ash, who as we come to learn, does know exactly what this thing is. Nobody knows as of yet that what this thing, they see this small little thing that's burst out of their colleague's chest, which is about about the same size
as the cat.
So turns out this thing grows very big, very fast.
And Noodle, I'm not really one for jump scares either. The jump scares weren't that bad when I watched this, but that could just be because Alien is so saturated into pop culture that I knew they were coming. Like, the chest burster scene was like, it was gross, but it wasn't that bad of a jump scare, but mostly because I knew it was coming.
And it's, I mean, because there's obviously, even if you never watched this movie, there's enough sort of famous things about this movie, like the chest burster, the face hugger kind of thing. But sort of everybody seems to at least have an idea, know something about what they are, because this has become the Alien's become such an iconic movie monster now that they've done.
I mean, hell, in one of the D&D games I'm playing, the current campaign, like the current mini arc for our campaign, is we're in a drow city being infested by aliens. Like chest bursters and everything.
I hope you got a predator in your party.
No.
As we've established, this is the one thing. The one thing that can fuck with the aliens is another alien of some description.
And I know this is off topic, and I haven't seen the sequel yet, but in the same session where we learned that this is basically an alien situation. The DM also revealed that there are like these giant spider golems like all around the city. So after the session, I messaged the GM, because I'm playing an artificer, and I asked, so would it be theoretically possible for me to sync my magic armor with one of the golems? Just to make the, get away from her, you bitch reference.
Yeah, yeah. Which obviously
obviously
that's the next film, which is which again I won't say too much about it because you haven't watched it yet. You probably do know this much about it a bit more already. That it's gone away. It goes a little bit away from being a suspense horror type to a more. There's still elements of that, but it does have more of an action movie vibe to it. It's very much more an action film than a suspense horror movie. Which worked. It absolutely worked for this franchise. But it's pretty much kind of it's after that we start getting some of the more questionable Alien movies. I'll say is after the second one.
Yeah. Well, and so also, there was all the talk about the atmosphere and about how all the crew, is technically doing everything right, but are being sabotaged by outside forces. About what makes it really effective. But there is another reading that you could apply to this film, is that despite being a very sci-fi, the whole thing takes place on a spaceship for the most part. It's also very primal.
Indeed, definitely.
Like, especially with the way the Nostromo is shot, in the tight corridors, the crew are basically, can basically be likened to a bunch of cavemen living in their cave, taking shelter in their cave against the unforgiving, harsh reality of the outside world. And this thing that, this monster out of the darkness invades their home and starts killing them off one by one. And even the weapon that is most effective against this monster harkens back to that same primal theming.
Yes, because we obviously get to this that they rig up flamethrowers, so fire, basically fire, which does seem to be the one thing that it'll at least run away from fire. As it comes established. But obviously now this thing takes the maintenance guy.
Yeah.
And weird thing is, that he's dead or whatever, but it's really weird that and you get maybe a bit more explanation for this stuff in some of the sequels. So, but we'll get into that if and when we do Aliens. That takes him up, takes away, and there's no blood anywhere or anything. It's really weird. We know he's killed or taken this guy, but like it doesn't leave a trace.
Yeah.
But they know this, but they quite fit. Figure out quite clearly so that this thing's big. That this thing it's got to be at least the size of a human. And bear in mind, none of them are sick, but they've worked that out because this thing's got to be at least the same size as a human, probably bigger, to have just taken him like that.
And they get the idea to use the air vent. They figure out, it's getting around the ship by using the air vents.
Yeah.
So they decide to use that to their advantage and use the air vents to basically shepherd it into the airlock and then space it, thus expelling the beast from their home. Going back to the primal metaphor reading of
Yeah.
of this film, which I think is very valid, especially considering some of the shots of Ripley with the flamethrower. It's very much a cave person with their torch.
Yeah. So obviously in the first, now this is probably where I think a lot of people would have maybe been a bit surprised with this movie. Is that, I mean, is the next person to go in after it is the captain, and who, let's be clear to that, Tom Skerritt was the top billed actor in this movie. He was the actual person who was like the top, in terms of billing on this movie, because and it's really, and you kind of, I suppose in the beginning you could argue maybe he is kind of the main character, the leader, and it's only as the film's going on you kind of realize that Ripley's the real protagonist of this. But
everyone knows the captain always survives.
No. Well, it's generally at least a few of the people who wear the red shirts go first,
Yeah.
But I guess it's more wasn't necessarily expecting to go that early. Okay. But then again, I suppose once he jumped into the, I think it might become a little more obvious, maybe in context of the film, that as you've been watching it, you may be thinking about it now, knowing that it's really as you're watching it, you're beginning to realize Ripley's the real center of the crew, and who a lot of this story is built around. And we have already established that once Dallas, that she's third in the pecking order, and first person killed was John Hurt, which is Kane, who was number 2. So I suppose in that respect, thinking about it now, it does sort of make sense that Dallas would be the next one to go.
And of course, after the alien gets, the xenomorph gets Dallas in the vent, Ripley goes into the computer to talk to Mother.
Yeah. But the interesting thing with this as well, just before we get to this, is again about what you could say about technically the crew not really doing anything wrong, except for the one guy who we're going to talk about in a minute. That I think, despite the fact that they just lost Dallas, Ripley does recognize that technically his plan was still sound. That is still probably their best hope. And unless anyone's got any better suggestions, we'll proceed. Now, I think Lambert does bring up the whole thing of taking the chances in the shuttle, but then obviously there's life support issues with that shuttle.
Yeah, because there's not enough. There's only enough life support for 3 people, and there are 4 crew members.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are only 3 people left.
Yeah.
But they don't know that.
We don't know that, right? We don't know that until a couple of minutes later.
Yeah.
So it's, because there's all there that was, so technically at this point, and one of the lines I do like in this is about when Ripley is like, I've got realizes I've got access to this. One of the lines I do like is like, Nash is like, what do you want me to do? Is exactly what you've been doing, nothing. I've got access to Mother now. I'll find out for myself. And then obviously goes in there. Obviously Dallas wasn't aware of this because she's obviously doing some override there to get to certain orders.
Yeah.
And we find out that the company wanted to retrieve a specimen of this alien. We assume probably to weaponize it and to profit off of this thing. At least certainly there was profit to be had here. probably by weaponizing this.
And that
And
the crew were
the crew were expendable.
Yeah, the
I believe
crew
it's.
were expendable.
Yeah. So it didn't. If the crew make it back alive, hey, great. If not, doesn't matter. It's not. You know, it's expected. They're expendable.
And you know, so the android attacks.
Yeah.
Because obviously Ripley wasn't going to just let the alien pick off her crew.
Yeah, and I've got to admit, one of the things I did love about that scene when it's revealed here, I mentioned right back at the beginning about how even though Ripley is the kind of, you know, yes, she is a strong woman, she is tough, but also shows the vulnerability and stuff. When she sees that, I mean, she has the reaction she has is like, you know, she's in tears. She just can't believe what they've done. And at that moment, you see how, you know, she's a very vulnerable and human character as well. They didn't go sort of too overboard with this and making her like a tough girl kind of thing, which maybe they do a bit more in the sequels. It goes a little further that way, but there's still a sort of vulnerability to her, which I think is what makes her a very, very good character, I think.
Yeah. And there also there is like you know, another reading of this film is, you know, exploring which probably, you know, obviously wasn't originally intended by the author, because, you know, Ripley was first intended to be, you know, played by a male actor.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are a lot of like feminine themes in Alien. Because, well, for one, the computer's called Mother. You know, the room where people interact with Mother is very, you know, design-wise is very womb-like. And another thing is the thing that differentiates between the android and the humans is the android, like when the android bleeds, it doesn't look like blood. It looks like milk.
Milk, yeah. So that, I mean, this was quite a bit of a reveal within this movie, was the fact that Ash was an android, and obviously, it really has Ripley, you know, by the throat and is about to kill her, and until Parker comes in with like just bashes his head clean off. But they do revive him, what's left of him, and mainly his head, because I think Ripley quite rightly speculates he knows what this thing is. He might know how to kill it. And which he pretty much is like, no.
Yeah, you can't kill it. It is unstoppable. It is nature's perfect monster.
Yeah. And that whole last line of his, I can't lie to you about your chances. You have my deepest sympathies, which is like, you know, basically you're fucked. In other words, it's a very polite way of saying you guys are fucked.
And so they prepare the Nostromo to self-destruct and get ready to go into the.
They figured out the best option is, okay, there are only 3 of us left. The best option is to take our chances in the shuttle. And you know, so they're gonna, you know, obviously they split up so I think obviously they're gonna get some supplies or whatever, and then Ripley's gonna scuttle the ship. And this okay, this comes with maybe like I said, this is where I might, like I said earlier, I might not be popular with this. She's sort of there ready to go, and then here's the cat meowing, and it's like, we forgot the cat. I may be a bit of a heartless bastard. I'm probably thinking fuck the cat at this point, but I mean that's just me.
Well, I mean, obvious. Well, I mean, the cat does, like, outside of the narrative purpose that the cat serves, and honestly, even in the narrative, it, like, the cat is behaving realistically in that it only shows up to fuck things up.
Yeah, that's basically that's a fucking cat. Yeah, that's a cat
but
in the hole.
it makes sense that they would keep a cat on board because who knows, there might be rodents or other pests, and also having
or a xenomorph,
or and having also, and that aside, having something small and fluffy would help boost the crew's morale for the time that they're awake.
Yeah.
I
mean, in a way, though, I mean, obviously it does. Like I said, you can argue about the logic or whatever, but that's she does go back in there to save the cat, which obviously is helping them now build the suspense even more, because not only she's got, they've got to find the cat, and they got to get, there's still the suspense thing. We know the aliens there. We also know they've got like 10 minutes before the ship goes boom. Well, and that's when they need to be on that shuttle within like 10 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's so she gets the cat onto the shuttle with 5 minutes to spare.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's 10 minutes to until the self-destruct order becomes irreversible.
Yeah.
And she gets the cat on board with 5 minutes to spare. The other two crew members have already bit the dust.
Yeah.
And she sees that the alien is on the shuttle.
Well, she sees that obviously after they've blown the ship, and she thinks, I mean, which is obviously, you kind of notice this is a good sort of like classic sort of, I suppose, a horror movie trope as well. You think, I've killed the bloody monster or whatever, and to find out, no, you haven't.
Well, no. Well, I mean, because there's that bit where she tries to go and cancel the self-destruct.
Oh yes. Now I remember. I remember.
But she can't, so it's like it's on the shuttle, and she runs, and it chases, or and she tries to do it, and then she's like, okay, I'm safe, thinking it like chased after her or something.
Yeah, we're thinking it's this thing's she's lured it back onto the ship and then done, but she thinks she's got. At the end of the phase, she blasts off from the ship alone with the cat.
Yeah. Puts the cat in the cryopod and gets gets stripped down.
Only to realize this thing's asleep on the shuttle. And then the sort of thing which she's which I think is a great sort of scene as well, where she's just slowly like hiding in the closet, just slowly getting into that spacesuit, and you can also tell the fact that she's really at this point as well, how she's really, really trying to not lose it, and it's the hyperventilating, just keeps repeating that things to herself, and
the little "You're My Lucky Star" song.
Yeah.
As she's slowly and carefully getting into the spacesuit to try and not, get its attention.
Yeah.
And honestly, that, like, even knowing, okay, she's in the sequel, so obviously she lives through this. This was probably the most suspenseful, like, the freakiest part of the movie for me. Is where, like, the alien's there, and after it's taken out all the other, crew members, Ash aside, because Ash was a traitorous android. And you have Ripley all alone, just trying to keep everything together, lest she get its attention and it eats her face. It's a very good, like, it's a very well shot scene to just give you the feeling of you are trapped in a room with an apex predator.
Yeah. And I think it's a brilliant sort of climax in a way to this movie, climactic scene to this movie.
Yeah.
Which is what I said all along, was what we were kind of doing the whole thing. It was like I said, the movie just sort of slow burn until, like, we get to the end, and we have the scene of them, obviously her trying to get onto the shuttle and away before the thing blows, and then this scene. There's a slow burn from this movie all the way up to that point, these points, and it was, to me, just brilliantly the way this was done.
Yeah. And of course she, opens the airlock, and the the xenomorph gets blasted out into space, and she manages to close the door before it can get back in, because it was, like, still tethered to the ship.
Yeah.
Or the shuttle. And then the movie ends as she goes back into cryospace.
Yeah. Which is, again, it was just the right point to end that movie as well, I think.
Yeah.
And just recording a log or whatever. This is Ripley, last survivor of the Nostromo, signing off. I love this movie. I mean, I've watched this God knows how many times, but you can see that I'm quoting quite a few things from memory. It gives you an idea that I have watched this movie a few times. I think as far as, like, combining science fiction with a sort of horror and just suspense, whatever, this movie is just it was so good.
Yeah.
In combining these elements. And good.
And yeah, because normally, like, when it comes to, like, sci-fi, horror, people think, like, cosmic Lovecraftian stuff, like maybe The Black Hole, which I haven't seen, because once again, I'm not really a horror guy.
No, I'm not at all. I mean, I didn't, because I think what's another science fiction horror film I did watch. I didn't. It was good in certain ways, but I didn't enjoy it. Was Event Horizon, because I do not really that sort of supernatural type. I did not enjoy that movie at all.
Or like arguably you could say Escape from the Forbidden Planet was some kind, was like a sci-fi horror. What with the creature from the id. Oh my, that is a trash fire of a movie that I unapologetically love.
That's fine. Maybe we ought to do a month on movies that are so bad that they're fucking brilliant.
I admit that it's a bad movie. I just love it. it's Escape from the Forbidden Planet, Time After Time,
Yeah.
Waterworld.
Mm.
Yeah.
But this is just done. This is just. I mean, you can really see in a way this movie for that sort of thing is just on a whole different fucking level.
Yeah.
To some of those movies you just mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
In the way that it does it, in the way the way they build suspense in this movie is just Ridley Scott really did a fantastic job on this movie.
Well, like arguably, and once again, it's not really like the sci-fi elements of Alien are just window dressing.
Yeah.
At its core, it's like you could put it in with the slasher flicks, or I'd say at its core it's more akin to like say like The Stalker in the Dark, that short story about the killer leopard.
Yeah.
Or the very beginning of White Fang, where you've got the people with their team of sled dogs. They're being followed by this pack of wolves that's picking them off one by one.
Yeah.
It's, which once again, it's a man versus the unforgiving, products of evolution.
Yeah.
And the happy ending is man barely survives.
Yeah. It's, it's more of a, that's kind of what it is. It's like at least one of them survived this,
Yeah.
Some people see, not me, as we've established in this group. Some people might think the happy ending is the cat surviving, but
yeah,
or
that despite all of our advancements, when things get down to brass tacks, there's only so much veneer separating us from our skin-wearing ancestors holding torches in caves.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, there's one thing that is sort of somewhat established in this movie is that this xenomorph, the alien, it's a quite intelligent creature. We established that this thing's not. It certainly is good at adapting and has some sort of, it is to a certain way. Just is we do because I think it's established this thing can just adapt to its environment.
The happy ending is that man is reduced to a primitive form of communism and has higher priorities than greed.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we want to say about this movie?
The only thing I can really think to add is the whole bit with the face hugger and the chest burster also plays into the to the themes you could pick up on if you're doing a feminist reading of the text.
Yeah.
What with the forced impregnation and then the being forcefully and bloodily emerging from the body.
Because wasn't Ash at some point in the movie actually made the comment Kane's son about the creature?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he says that line somewhere in there.
also, also knowing that, the person who gets impregnated, who gets face hugs name is Cain, you could make a biblical allegory
Yeah.
out of it where, Cain brings murder into the into the Nostromo.
There's a lot of things you can, definitely read into this. And I mean, I definitely got to say, I think one of the things about this, the casting that this movie was fantastic as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it does help when you've got some, very, very good cast there, like people like actors like Tom Skerritt. John Hurt obviously is a legendary actor. Ian Holm, and Yaphet Kotto was quite a big name actor in the sort of 70s. So he was actually a Bond villain, but this is the real coming out, because I think this is only only a first or second movie. It was Sigourney Weaver, who's pretty much an unknown, and obviously, this was obviously, obviously this made her a name, and she did absolutely, really outshine all of these other, really great actors in this movie.
Also, one other thing is, I picked up on a lot of thematic similarities, especially on a plot level, between this and another landmark sci-fi film. But I'm planning on, I've been planning on doing a Kubrick month for forever, so we might as well make it a segue. So I'm gonna throw in a little bit of shilling right now and say next week, 2001.
I can't let you do that, Ring. I should have just changed my avatar to the cow there for it's a good segue, because I always get a feeling there's definitely elements of 2001 as well. Like there's a feeling of that was definitely incorporated into this movie for sort of a vibe and certain. I think there was a bit of inspiration there. I think.
Yeah.
Because obviously, as I said right at the very beginning of this movie, it was pitched as being Jaws in space to the studios, who was probably, like I said, with the two biggest film franchises in the world being Jaws and Star Wars at the time, was probably an easy sell in the end.
But
it definitely has not got a Star Wars feel about it at all. This movie, it's like gone the total other way from like Star Wars in the way that it feels, and
I mean, even the design of the Nostromo was like, okay, what did Star Wars do? Let's do the opposite of that.
Let's go in the other direction. Yeah. It's very.
But
if they tried to make this feel like even in a little way like Star Wars, this movie would have flopped badly. I think it would not have been the same movie.
Yeah. But for example, a lot of some thematic similarities, which will get more explored on the 2001 side next week, is the secret agenda of a larger entity is what causes most of the problems aboard the ship. And also, once again, the hearkening back to humanity's primal past, albeit in different forms. It's another, interesting juxtaposition between the two.
Yeah, I'd say so. So I think that was a.
Any other things to say?
Not really. I think we said it all. I mean, we're like I said, this. I think as you probably gather, this is a movie that I really love, really enjoy, and don't really have much in terms of anything negative to say about it. Like I said, when we get further down the rabbit hole with some of the sequels, yes, it does take a. As these things tend to do, they tend to take a bit of a, dive off of a cliff, and then we get the crossovers with Predator franchise, which I would even say the first one of those wasn't a bad movie, but then they got stupid with that as well. Then,
speaking of Predator, like, here's what you need to do for a Predator movie. If you want to have a really good Predator movie, set it in the set it either in medieval times or in the Stone Age.
Yeah. But see, look, I definitely say there's a very big difference between the two franchises in a way, because where this film was a masterclass in suspense. I mean, Predator, you could argue that there was a good suspense element to it at first, but you just knew really this is an action movie. Which you can argue again, this is where the immediate sequel, Aliens, tends to go a little bit as well, but I think still done in a bit of a better way than Predator. Plus, I think, look, I don't mind. I'll just say this: I don't mind a lot of good '80s Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, but there's a reason that guy hasn't won any Oscars. That's just me,
Yeah. So, so are we saying Ridley Scott jumped the alien shark?
I would just say, to be fair, Ridley Scott didn't direct all of the movies in this franchise. That's important to note. I think. I think actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think James Cameron directs Aliens. I think it might be David Fincher that did Alien 3. I can't quite remember.
Yeah.
But then Alien Resurrection was a fucking awful movie. So.
Yeah. So, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Don't approach strange-looking eggs. Safety tip. That's it.
Strange. So what you're saying is strange-looking eggs distributing spiders is no.
It's probably
no, strange-looking eggs distributing spiders is no method for a source of government.
Yeah, probably, yeah. And see, and I don't think this creature's too far-fetched when I look at sort of Australian wildlife as well. So I'll leave it at that. I think that's about it.
Yeah, so with that, let's go ahead and move on to shilling.
Okay. I haven't got much to shill at the moment. I've not been doing a lot. I'm not been doing too much on my channel at the moment, but my channel's there. And so, subscribe to it if you haven't already. So.
And Secular D&D should start up again next week. There were hiccups because the guy running turned me into a newt, which is funny because I think one of the characters in Aliens is named Newt.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. So this is true.
But secular D&D will be starting up again next Saturday. It had to be kind of a bit of a delay because the DM had to go see Dune, and
to be honest, I think that's a fair priority.
yeah,
That's it.
and the date got shifted around a bit, and so but the DM has seen Dune, so secular D&D should be back on next week. Um, and next week for Media Musings, we will be starting off Kubrick month with 2001: A Space Odyssey. And of course, seeing as how the second Sunday of November will be the 14th, and that being only 3 days after Veterans Day, I see it as only fitting to follow up 2001 with Full Metal Jacket.
And I will be there for that. I will be there for that one because you think I know some of the quotes from this movie. I think I've got some of Sergeant Hartman's quotes down to a fine art.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, my pronouns are they, the DM. And maybe I should turn that into a shirt sometime. Who knows? So, once again, secular D&D should be back next week. Starting around the 17th of November, my time slots will probably change around on the channel because peak season's starting up, but I'll try and be more active, but my schedule's going to be kind of crazy. And
I think you're in a sort of similar industry to what I'm in, without giving too much away. But but yes, let's just say this time of year it gets a bit chaotic.
Also, before I forget, something popped up on my Facebook memories, which reminded me of the time that that Orson Welles broadcast of the War of the Worlds actually sent me to the emergency room. But if you want to hear that story along with other embarrassing stories, you need to get me to 200 subscribers so I can do the embarrassing story stream.
How far off are you now from that ring?
15, I believe. I'll double check, see if I got any more during the stream. Let's see. Nope. Yeah, still at 15 left. I'm at 185 subscribers.
Oh, we've got to do a subscription drive for you at some point. Get you, because it's like you've been at this glass ceiling of around 180 ish for forever now. We need to do a subs drive and get you to 200.
Yeah.
We must do this.
But with that, I think we'll go on to taglines. Scummer?
As it's Alien, just remember, in space, nobody can hear you scream. And happy Halloween and blessed Samhain to people as well. So.
And remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.